Mr. Crowley, thank you so much for coming to VOA.
It's a pleasure.
Let's start with Pakistan, Afghanistan. Pakistan's going through a parliamentary review of its relationship with the US, and I'll have you look into your crystal ball and tell me, what do you see emerging out of this review?
Well, it's a very important relationship. I think in combating terrorism around the world, perhaps the most important relationship in that equation. Clearly, there are challenges on both sides, primarily political. We were talking just a couple of years ago about a long-term strategic partnership. Various events have happened since then that have called into question the relationship. I think it is appropriate and necessary for both countries to take a step back, let things settle down, and then refocus on what is important to the relationship. Both the United States and Pakistan together are combating terrorism and political violence that affects the security of both countries. I think over time, this will become more clear. There are still questions about how best to do that on one side, both sides, and together. But I think eventually the countries will reset the relationship, perhaps lowering expectations of the long run, but I think it's important for both countries to recognize the vital importance of and the need to sustain this relationship.
You talked about the reset, and David Ignatius of the Washington Post recently wrote that to finish the reset, the countries will have to deal with 3 issues. Let's talk about them one by one. Drone strikes. What happens to them? Do they stay? Do they go away?
Actually, they're quite effective. The good news, as I understand it in this program, is that there are fewer targets, so that the level of operations perhaps that existed a couple of years ago may not be necessary or as necessary in the future. I think the challenge here is primarily a political one. The United States is reported to be conducting drone strikes with Pakistan's permission, but not with the support of the Pakistani people. That ultimately is an unsustainable situation. It would be better to reconstruct this program over time so that it's a joint program that both has the strategic and political support of the governments and the population. That's the only way that this gets sustained over the long term.
The second thing, NATO supply routes. What do you see happening with them?
That's a challenge that actually is going to disappear in a couple of years, or at least be greatly reduced within a couple of years as the United States reduces its troop presence in Afghanistan. It is important. It's not the only supply route into Afghanistan, but over time that's one issue that will take care of itself.
And in the short term, if they reopen, under what conditions do you see them reopening?
Well, again, this is part of a larger question where obviously the United States and Pakistan both have a shared interest in the outcome of Afghanistan. So it's an issue that provides some political leverage, but ultimately the ability of the United States military together with NATO to operate in Afghanistan is in international interest. It's also in Pakistan's interest.
And now to the third and most important of them, the talks with Taliban. How do you see the interests converging or diverging on that issue?
Again, the Pakistan has a significant interest in what happens in Afghanistan over the long term. The Taliban and Pakistan have had a close relationship in the past, but as Pakistan, I think, has realized over time, this political insurgency, doesn't respect borders. So, the violence that has affected Afghanistan has also affected, Pakistan. So I think there is a shared interest in seeing a political process move forward. But all of those involved, the United States, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, have to figure out exactly how this is going to proceed.
This is going forward. And you talk about the shared interest. I want to bring in something that Marvin Weinbaum and James Farwell, the author of Pakistan Cauldron, wrote in an op-ed column, which is that even though Pakistan and US have clashed a lot, they seem to have their interests converging. Both of them want Taliban in the political process post 2014, but they don't want Taliban to dominate everything. They want other ethnic groups to check Taliban. Do you see that, and how do you see both countries get to that point?
Well, I would say and it's not just Pakistan. I mean, as the United States in its reformulated policy in 2009 indicated, this has to be a regional solution. So there has to be a long-term political solution to Afghanistan that Pakistan can support, but also India, but also China, but also Iran, and also other Central Asian republics, all of whom have an interest in Afghanistan, and all of whom in the past have tried their best to influence events in Pakistan, or in Afghanistan. So it is, it's one of those things. We understand where the finish line is, but the exact route of getting from here to there is not yet clear.
Where do you see, and let me ask a different question. We want to come back to Afghanistan because that's a different matter and a whole big pot of trouble in itself. But let's stick to Pakistan for now. Ambassador Sherry Rahman, the Pakistani ambassador to the US, recently wrote a letter to the House Speaker. She complained about the resolution on Balochistan by Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. She said it can undermine the ties. Do you agree that that resolution or similar resolutions can undermine the ties between Pakistan and US?
Well, let's separate, a legislative resolution which has no chance of becoming policy from the policy. The policy of the United States is committed to Pakistan as it currently configured, and Afghanistan as it currently configured. The United States has no interest in seeing a fragmentation in this part of the world, much less in the other part of the world. But I understand that these resolutions, can result in political turmoil. But we should not confuse a resolution by one or a small group of House members from the policy of the United States.
And we saw not just that resolution, we also saw some bills introduced on Dr. Shakil Afridi, the guy who helped the CIA locate bin Laden, trying to give him citizenship, trying to give him the Congressional Gold Medal. I'm wondering, what's the significance of the timing of all of them coming back to back?
Well, that is a concern to the United States, but then again, that's also why it's important for Pakistan to answer questions that the United States has raised about just what kind of knowledge existed within Pakistan about bin Laden's presence in Abbottabad. I mean, what this really goes to is the challenge of trust between Pakistan and the United States, and U.S. leaders talk about it, Pakistan leaders talk about it. This needs to be a strategic partnership, and a strategic partnership is founded on trust, and that trust has been challenged. There are historical reasons for that. There are more recent reasons for that. One way or the other, the United States and Pakistan have to continue this very important conversation, try to overcome, these political waves that do occur from time to time, and focus on the long term, and just find ways to share information, share perspective, create a common ground, create a common strategy, and then pursue that together.
You talked about trust, and with the parliamentary review in Pakistan, we will hopefully find out what Pakistan wants from the US and from this relationship. But what people are asking in Pakistan and around the world is, what does the US want from Pakistan?
The US wants Pakistan to be a constructive actor in addressing challenges that confront Pakistan, the region, and the United States.
And the definition of constructive is?
Well, there are violent political actors within Pakistan. Some of them have been a creation of Pakistan. Some of them operate and perhaps continue to operate with Pakistani support. We understand the regional and historical reasons for that. But as the United States has said to Pakistan for a number of years, these actors are a threat to the United States, but they're also a threat to Pakistan. And I think what the United States wants to see is a more consistent, long-term approach. There are questions and challenges on both sides.
But
and that's why this assessment and this ongoing dialogue and this ongoing partnership as challenging as it can be from time to time, is important to both
Some in
countries.
Pakistan do argue, though, that the U.S. has also supported violent groups when it served its national security interests or its strategic interests, and that if Pakistan does, and there's a big if there, I'm not suggesting they do, if it does support some groups and considers it to be in its own strategic interest, how is it different?
Well, and in fact, history, and that is the history of this, and that is a major and justified concern for Pakistan. There was a shared strategy by Pakistan and the United States and others, to drive the Soviet Union out of Afghanistan. And it is absolutely fair to say that once that was accomplished, the United States largely left the region, turned its back on the region for a number of reasons relating to Pakistan's nuclear program, actually then sanctioned Pakistan, and that minimized cooperation. What Pakistan, I think, understandably wants from the United States is a long-term relationship, to work together for shared outcomes. I think that's what the United States wants as well, and that's why if both sides can find ways to manage the politics around this relationship, we can ultimately be successful.
The former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright recently called Pakistan the international migraine. Why do you think would Pakistanis wrong to say, you've done this to us before, you will do this to us again, you will leave when your job is done and we'll have to pick up the pieces and deal with the mess? Why should they trust the U.S.?
I think that's why the actions on both sides and reaffirming the importance of the relationship on both sides is important. And that's what the assessment on the Pakistani side formally, and I think an assessment perhaps quietly on the American side as well, to kind of reset the relationship, maybe lower expectations to a more realistic level, find ways to cooperate on things that are important to both sides, and then gradually build up trust over time, as opposed to trying to do it in a relatively short time, which was perhaps unrealistic with the strategy that was unveiled by Pakistan and the United States perhaps 2 years ago.
While we're talking about Pakistan and Afghanistan and US and how to build trust, there's one issue that's become even more important between Pakistan and US in the recent days, and that's the gas pipeline with Iran. Pakistan insists it's going to build it, and US says, if you do, we're going to sanction you. What happens if the US sanctions Pakistan or is forced to?
Well, we're back to perhaps where we were in the 1990s, where the United States did sanction Pakistan because of its proliferation activities and its nuclear program. This is very, very difficult, and Pakistan has its own national interests. The United States understands that and respects that. By the same token, Pakistan has its own international obligations, and right now one of the most compelling issues in the world is the future of Iran's nuclear program. There are international sanctions, but there are U.S. sanctions that say to countries, if you have an economic relationship with Iran, you need to find ways to wind that down, but you shouldn't start new business with Iran. And if Pakistan decides to start new business with Iran through this pipeline, it is potentially in violation of U.S. law.
What kind of sanctions could be placed on Pakistan, and what impact do you see that can possibly have?
It would have an effect on business. It could have an effect on international or cooperation between the United States and Pakistan. And unfortunately, both of those are vitally important to building up, the Pakistani economy and building up the capabilities of the civilian, Pakistani government. So it would be very unfortunate if this particular decision by Pakistan potentially affects this longer strategic partnership that we think is important to both countries.
Would the U.S. also put pressure on international financial institutions, IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, to give less loans or stricter?
Well, any entity that is doing business with Iran potentially loses its ability to do business with the United States, and these are the difficult calculations that many countries and companies are making all around the world. The United States is not asking anything of Pakistan that it hasn't asked of Japan, China, Korea, other countries that do business with Iran. If you have existing business, find ways to wind that down. But if you choose to continue to do business with Iran, you might find yourself prohibited from doing business with the United States.
You mentioned the 1990s where Pakistan was sanctioned due to its proliferation activities, yet analysts say that the proliferation activities were ignored or the US looked the other way while the war was going on. The sanctions only applied once the US was done in Afghanistan. So there's a fear in Pakistan that the repeat performance can happen.
In the United States today, I think the most compelling issue for the United States is the future of the Iranian nuclear program and the danger that poses to peace and stability in the Middle East. No one wants to see a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, just like 15 years ago, no one wanted to see a nuclear arms race between Pakistan and India. Pakistan needs to understand that today there is no more compelling issue for the United States from a security standpoint than what's happening in Iran. And Pakistan has to evaluate the short-term benefits of an energy program. And we understand how important energy is to Pakistan. In fact, for the last 3 years, the United States has been working to find ways to expand production, improve energy conservation in Pakistan, expressly so more Pakistani citizens can have access to more sources of energy. We understand why this is important, but this particular project has the potential to violate U.S. law, and it has the potential to fundamentally change the U.S.-Pakistani relationship.
You said that this is the most important issue for the U.S. right now, more important than the Afghan peace process. Do you think the U.S. will jeopardize that process if it has to?
This is not an either-or situation. This is about Pakistan deciding, on its own national security policy, what is more important to it. If Pakistan wants to see a nuclear Iran next door to Pakistan, that is its right, but that decision has consequences.
But if
this is not about the United States and Pakistan. The international community has come together. There is a very strong consensus, that Iran should not have a nuclear program and build a nuclear weapon. The international community all agrees with that. The sanctions are a way to bring Iran back to the table and to see Iran change course. And Pakistan has its own responsibility as part of the international community to work constructively with the United States and others.
But as you know very well, all these things do play a part in international politics. So if Pakistan does go ahead with the pipeline before 2014 or beginning of 2014 as they do plan to, how would that play a part in the Afghanistan peace process?
It would be unfortunate. I mean, we've talked today about the importance of a strategic partnership between the United States and Pakistan. And this is one of those issues that both sides have to sit together and try to work through a just solution.
Do you think this issue will blow up the whole Pakistan, Afghanistan?
Well, I mean, there should be no ambiguity. The Secretary of State has made clear that if Pakistan pursues this project, it puts the economic relationship between the United States and Pakistan at risk, and it puts the political relationship between the United States and Pakistan at risk.
And what is the U.S. willing to do? Are they willing to go the distance without Pakistan in Afghanistan?
Well, again, I don't think the United States wants to see, this is a Hobson's choice. I think we want to see the right decisions made on Iran, just as we want to see the right decisions made with respect to Afghanistan.
You've been an insider for very long. You've been a spokesperson for major agencies, the White House, the State Department, the Pentagon. Tell me, how do you see this time around Washington's wheels turning differently from when they did after the first Afghan war? Do you see any difference?
I think we've learned from our mistakes. We turned our back on South Asia during the 90s. There were reasons for that, understandable reasons for that, but clearly that was a strategic error, by the United States. And I think that both starting with the Bush administration, continuing, with the Obama administration refocusing on the region and looking at this in terms of a regional outcome as opposed to individual outcomes. And this is also why the United States supports dialogue between Pakistan and India, because some of the things that are happening or have happened in the past of concern to the United States are expressly because of the way in which Pakistan and India look at each other and in their strategic interests and their conflicts of the past. So the United States has a different approach to the region. I think it is committed to the long term for the region. That's a relationship with Afghanistan, a relationship with Pakistan and other countries in the region. But saying that is one thing. The politics around this and the policies around this are very, very difficult.
And I was going to ask you, do you see this as a bipartisan thing, or do you think one party is pushing more for keeping the focus on the region post 2014?
I think everyone understands, the strategic importance of Pakistan. And there are issues involved in this relationship. There are grievances on both sides.
And I will just interrupt you.
Yeah, and that's why this dialogue and this ongoing work, just needs to continue.
No, I was just going to interrupt you and say, you say everyone understands, and yet we hear voices in Congress saying again and again, we're going to cut the budget, you're not doing enough, etc., etc. So when you say everyone,
it is a parliament, and there are 100 different attitudes and 100 different policies, in Congress. But Congress reacts to events, but it's the White House that actually, is responsible for the policy formulation and the policy execution. But in a democracy in the United States, there are going to be a number of different voices saying a number of different things. In Pakistan as well, an emerging democracy has a lot of different ideas about what this relationship should be about. But that's where policy is consolidated in the executive branch of both countries, and that's why the ongoing dialogue is so important.
Let's come to the third partner in this whole relationship, which is Afghanistan. And Afghanistan has been burning literally in the past few weeks. First it was the Quran, then it was the protests against the Quran that got people killed, including US soldiers. And now over the weekend there have been a massacre, an unfortunate incident, killing of civilians by a US Army soldier. How do you see this impacting the talks, and do you think the US can get out of this?
Well, of course, and the other actor in this is the Taliban itself.
Of course.
Very, very difficult, short-term to intermediate-term, political challenge, and very difficult to manage on both sides. Obviously, a horrific event, not a representation of policy, but certainly a tragic development by the actions of one soldier. I think both countries, the United States and Pakistan and Afghanistan, need to focus on the long term. And the long term is both having a common strategy and then having enough resources devoted on all sides, so that you can achieve a favorable political outcome and achieve stability in the region. But the politics of this are going to be very, very difficult, and I would expect probably some changes will be inevitable.
A lot of people in the region, columnists, op-ed pieces, they're asking, how does the US go ahead and burn the Quran yet again? I mean, didn't we see Guantanamo and what happens when you desecrate the Quran, and didn't we see the Florida pasture? I mean, how do you not recognize that this is a total no-no?
It was an incredible mistake. And I've asked that same question. 10 years of the United States trying to clarify and build a constructive relationship with the Islamic world. To have somebody who would not understand, how sacred, the Quran is a regrettable mistake. The United States is investigating it. It has indicated it is a mistake. And hopefully, and I think actually to Afghanistan's credit, while there were protests for a number of days, there were the tragic retaliations. There were every indication that views were beginning to settle on all sides, and now we have this tragedy on top of a tragedy.
And you mentioned how Afghans reacted to the Quran burnings. Let me bring in the US politics. This is a presidential year. We had some Republican nominees saying, yes, it was a mistake, but the Afghans should apologize for the killing of US soldiers, which really didn't go well back in the region. Do you see the US presidential politics in this very critical year playing a role in what's happening in Afghanistan and Pakistan?
I think the issue of the apology and whether the president should have offered it or not, I think he did exactly the right thing, and I believe that that had a role in smoothing out the difficult reaction among an understandable reaction of the Afghan people. But I don't see the apology being really the issue. I think the real challenge for the United States, because these incidents have activated public concern both in Afghanistan and in the United States. It is very important for both countries to keep a focus on the long term. But I certainly think that if politics get embroiled in this, it could very well be that after 2014 we lose the prospect of a strategic partnership with Afghanistan. I think that would be detrimental to the region. I think it would be detrimental to U.S. interests, Afghan interests, and Pakistani interests.
The Afghans, though, on an official level, calling this incident over the weekend mass murder. I heard, one of the analysts saying if someone's fit to be a soldier, they're fit to be tried. How does the U.S. react? How do they deal with something like this?
Well, I do think that the United States' credibility is on the line. No question that in Afghan tradition there has been a egregious action and an understandable demand for justice.
Or international tradition, not just Afghan.
Sure, I understand that. There's the investigation is already underway. The United States has pledged to take this investigation seriously and let the legal course proceed as it might, and that's going to be a great challenge. I mean, having formerly served in the military, no rational human being does what this individual has evidently done, and that actually could come into play in terms of the judicial process. Anyone in the judicial process has rights, is entitled to mount a vigorous defense before an impartial judge. That's a tradition in Afghanistan, it's a tradition in the United States. So we shouldn't, there should be justice, but I would caution that justice doesn't necessarily automatically mean the course that the people of Afghanistan are understandably demanding.
Is there any possibility of having the soldier tried in Afghanistan, in an Afghan court?
Under the current status of forces agreement, the United States will deal with this with its own military justice system, and I would just ask the people of Afghanistan to be patient, watch this process unfold, and then make a judgment when it's done and a fair verdict has been rendered.
Now, I will draw your attention to another incident that happened not in Afghanistan but in Pakistan that people are mentioning, which is when a CIA contractor killed 2 people in the city of Lahore and claimed diplomatic immunity. He was eventually brought out of Pakistan but never charged and tried in the US. So people in the region are saying, you take your people out, then you don't try them, or you try them, we never find out what happens to them. Why should we?
Well, that triggers a number of issues. On the one hand, he did have diplomatic protection, and under the Vienna Convention, which the United States has signed and Pakistan has signed, and it's in the interest of both countries, he has diplomatic immunity.
Although, just to interrupt you, his diplomatic immunity was never clearly proven. Just to
I was in the State Department and was heavily involved in this issue. I can assert with confidence that this individual had diplomatic immunity. He had diplomatic status in Pakistan. Now, on the same token, obviously, there was a tragic loss of life. As I left the State Department a year ago, this was being investigated. I do not know where that investigation has gone, My understanding is this individual felt he was threatened and took actions that he felt were in self-defense. But I simply do not know where the status of the investigation is.
So
There was a promise by the United States of an investigation once he came back to the United States, and that investigation was started before I left the government.
do you think all these incidents, the Quran burning, the killing of the soldier, will speed up the withdrawal?
It could. But again, there are two questions here. There's what happens between now and 2014 in Afghanistan. Right now, the focus is on a counterinsurgency mission and a training mission to create capabilities within the Afghan government so it can provide for its own security. There's also a question of this long-term strategic partnership and continuing that training effort and continuing to attack terrorist elements in the region that are a threat to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the United States. I do fear that depending on how the politics of this are handled, we could see changes not only in the short term, but at risk. What at risk really is the long-term relationship, and this is where this aspect of trust is so challenging. These are egregious actions, and when they happen, if you have a level of trust in the bank, you can draw from that, but the bonds between the countries hold. Here we have a situation because of various incidents, not only in Afghanistan and Pakistan. You look in the bank and there's not sufficient trust there. And some way, somehow, these countries have to rebuild that level of trust so that inevitably when you have these kinds of incidents, the people and the governments are confident that while they deal with the short-term situation, they have confidence in the long-term relationship. That's what the United States has to demonstrate to both Afghanistan and Pakistan going forward, that we are in fact committed to this region for the long term.
The US is trying to talk to the Taliban. That is considered the key to withdrawing from Afghanistan. But the Taliban are already using this incident, as they did the last incident, as a propaganda tool.
These are unfortunate incidents in their own right, and they come at a horrible time.
But do you think that at this point any talks are possible?
Very difficult under this environment, and certainly the Taliban is exploiting, these attacks, and may well be reevaluating their approach, to a peace process. Since 2009, the United States, NATO, and Afghanistan have kind of regained the initiative, taken back territory that the Taliban either controlled or influenced. And stabilize the situation in much of the country. Now the Taliban, and the Taliban, I think, had come to these prospective negotiations because they were under pressure. Now they may change their calculations, and they'll be watching very carefully to see how Afghanistan and the United States and Pakistan handle these latest situations on both sides of the border, and they'll be looking for possible opportunities and openings here. The Taliban right now is the only real beneficiary of the tragic events that have happened in the region in recent months.
And what happens if they decide to just sit it out? I mean, where do we go?
I mean, an insurgency normally ends through a political process and a political agreement. That is our hope, that is our strategy. But obviously you need cooperation of all the players, including the Taliban, and we'll see what decisions they make.
Mr. Crowley, thank you so much.
A pleasure.